I've been having some technical difficulties, so thank you for bearing with me. All right, I'm here. I'm live. I think I'm in frame. We're going to find that out in a second because I'm going to watch it over here. Thank you for bearing with me. Yeah, like I said, there were some hiccups. So, oh, there I am. Okay, I can hear myself and see myself, and that's cool. Yeah, my phone just decided it wanted to restart. It does that when I put it on selfie mode, so that's why I got the phone over here in non-selfie mode, and I'm monitoring the chat over on my laptop. So that's what's going on. Thank you for joining Office Hours with G once again. This is the second week we're doing Office Hours with G. Thanks everybody who tuned in last week, whether you tuned in live, whether you watched the replay. Also, a big shout to everybody who watched our Have You Met interviews last week, hosted by Jazzy, the Uncontrolled Goddess. Jazzy did a great job. That's the featured video on our channel right now, by the way, so go check that out. We had Lord Goldie, longtime friend, longtime collaborator, UMC, one of our Next to Rise artists with her current project, The Healers. Her brother Dusty, who just became an underdog. Thanks to Dusty for becoming an underdog, making it official with us. And of course, Mr. Adams, by the way, the host of the Mobile Melody podcast, all joined us last week on Have You Met. Just some housekeeping things coming up. We have July 9th, our first Underdogs Across Borders hybrid, in-person and virtual benefit concert supporting our Underdogs Across Borders campaign, which is designed to increase the opportunities that we are creating for our artists, not only here in the U.S., but across the world. So tune in. That's going to stream right here on our YouTube channel, July 9th. We'll also be in person here in Nashville at Helping Our Music Evolve in the very room I'm sitting in. So if you are free that night, whether from afar or close to us here in Nashville, we hope you'll join us. It's a $10 suggested donation. And if you're joining virtually, I'll put it in the chat after this, or in the comments rather. Actually, I'll put it in the chat right now. I'll put the RSVP link. With that RSVP link, of course, there is a suggested donation of $10. We appreciate your support. Again, this is going to help fuel our activations, not only to be on site at these different conferences and places around the world, but also to bring our artists there as well. So very excited about that. Let's see, open panel. Yep, okay. Live chat is open. How do I add a comment? How do I do this? Anybody want to help me, navigate technology? I guess I'm getting a little long in the tooth. Anyway, there is the RSVP for the Underdogs Across Borders benefit. We've got a great lineup. It's right there in the chat. If you have anything in the chat that you want to bring to us, please do. In the meantime, today, as promised on our other socials, we're going to be talking about boundaries and the importance of boundary setting on the creative journey. And of course, what would the creative journey be without 60 plus lessons from the creative journey, a handy guide for the budding entrepreneur? That's my debut book, released in February, still going strong. And we're going to take our time through a couple excerpts from the book. Of course, we go from lesson 1 all the way to lesson 60 plus. So if you haven't gotten your hands on a copy of this yet, I'll put that in the chat as well before we leave. But I want to get right to it. And I'm going to just flip ahead. Last week we did lessons 1 and 2. We talked about the beginning. This week we're going to go a little further into the book, a little more than halfway. And we're going to hit lessons 37 and 38. And these have to do with interpersonal dynamics and setting boundaries. So let's start with lesson number 37, shall we? People's reactions and behavior are reflections of their emotional states. Simply, each one of us is responsible for dealing with our own shit. Let's say you just told somebody you're close to that you need space. You care deeply about this person. It could be a colleague, friend, relative, or significant other. But you feel as though boundaries have been crossed. Excuse me. Allergies plus spicy food, loosening some things up right now. Let me start that paragraph over. Let's say you just told somebody you're close to that you need space. You care deeply about this person. It could be a colleague, friend, relative, or significant other. But you feel as though boundaries have been crossed, and you want to allow yourself room to process the relationship dynamic and figure out how to best show up in the future. You also hope that this gives the other person the opportunity to do the same. Instead of accepting your request and beginning a dialogue about what that space looks like and when to reconvene, the other person in the equation becomes defensive. They launch into accusations that you're leaving them in the dust forever and that everything you ever did for them was only for selfish reasons. You find yourself at a loss for words as you're trying to process their reaction. You start second-guessing yourself. Was I wrong to ask for space? Am I asking for space for the right reasons? Are they right about me? Have I been disrespectful toward them? These questions arose not because your intentions changed or because their quote-unquote true underlying nature had been exposed. They arose because of the narrative this person created in their own mind about the situation, most likely stemming from a prior traumatic experience. This is a signal that your counterpart has not healed that part of themselves and is projecting it onto you to avoid the discomfort associated with doing so. You already know who you are and how you've shown up to this dynamic. Just because the other person can't or isn't willing to see your best intentions in play doesn't mean they aren't there. In times like these, don't waver in your commitment to clear, respectful communication, and be clear that appropriate communication runs on a two-way street. If the projection continues, set firmer boundaries. You're not a bad person for doing so. In fact, lesson number 38. The boundaries you set will determine your quality of life. Think about how many former professional athletes went from rags to riches. Now put yourself in their shoes. Oftentimes, they have gone from having absolutely nothing to suddenly having millions of dollars in their bank accounts. Most people in that situation would find themselves wanting to give back and to use their newfound resources to elevate those around them. As kind a notion as that is, it can be taken too far. In the case of many of those professional athletes, they found themselves giving too much away too quickly. They help out their immediate relatives. The next thing they know, distant relatives begin needing favors. Before long, relatives they've never met could also use a hand. Before they realize what happened, their playing days are over, and they're left with none of the riches they had acquired. They're back at square one. When you begin gaining influence and resources, you begin to attain power. But, as a famous Uncle Ben once said, with great power comes great responsibility. In this case, your responsibility is to ensure that you don't spend so much time filling the cups of others that you leave nothing for yourself. Our resources, time, money, energy, brain power, are not to be hoarded. However, we must regard them with enough respect and reverence to know when we've been giving too much. Refer back to our earlier points about one-sided relationships. That's an earlier lesson in the book. If somebody comes around continually asking for your resources without in some way replenishing what they've been given, the imbalance will often create a depletion of said resources, as well as relationship issues such as resentment and anger that come with non-reciprocation. Altruism is a beautiful virtue, and I believe that we should give as much as our circumstances allow. With that said, we must respect those circumstances by not giving to the point where we forget to honor ourselves. So this has been, first of all, lesson number 37 and 38 to a degree. It was interesting. As I was writing the book, I was dealing with situations like those in real time. As a matter of fact, lesson number 37, the first one I read, was directly influenced by something that had very recently happened at the time that I was finishing this book over the winter. And, I didn't name names, I didn't give specifics, but, I know what I was referring to. And it was one of those situations where you do set a boundary, you are clear, you're respectful, you're communicative, and you're left wondering what happened because you're not given that respect back. And it's in those moments that we must pause and, of course, assess our behavior, right? But also understand where the other person might be coming from, not only in their reaction, but perhaps what caused it, right? And oftentimes, more often than not, the vast majority of the time, someone's reaction has nothing to do with you, right? Everybody's responsible for keeping their side of the street clean. And I think that's something that I've just had to keep in mind throughout the creative journey. You're dealing with a lot of people, you're dealing with a lot of different personalities, and everybody's got their own stuff. Everybody is coming to this from different experiences, different perspectives, different traumatic events, right? And when you have a disagreement with somebody, that's when those things tend to come to the surface. They never come to the surface at a convenient time, or at least rarely do they, where people just openly share like, hey, this is the trauma that I'm working through. This is something you might have to watch out for, especially in business relationships. It comes out in times of conflict when people slip into their reactive states. And so when somebody slips into that reactive state, we have a choice. We can either escalate the reaction by reacting ourselves, or we can take a step back, take ownership of our part, and give them the opportunity to take ownership of theirs. Now, they won't always do that, right? People don't always own their stuff. There's a lot of projection that takes place just out in the world today. I mean, we see it all the time in media, on social media, in every facet of society. It's a hard thing to do the work, and it's a hard thing to face yourself, right? And it's a hard thing to really come to an understanding of, like, I need to do this work so I can show up better in these situations. It's a lot easier to point the finger. It's a lot easier for us to project when things become uncomfortable or inconvenient. However, success on the creative journey requires us to take that look within ourselves. It requires us to assess the ways that we can show up better, assess the ways that perhaps we've fallen short or are currently falling short, and make the adjustments to show up as a more evolved version of ourselves. And I think as we do that too, and we create that expectation for and from ourselves, we start holding other people to that higher standard, right? And that goes into the second lesson that I read, number 38 overall in the book, which is about boundary setting. And this is something that I've absolutely had to dial in this year. You know, I found myself at the beginning of the year, again, without getting into specifics, you know, faced with the biggest opportunities of my life and my career coming up. I was in the process of finishing this book. I was getting ready to go present at South by Southwest. And I'll be honest, over the holiday season and bleeding into January, there were some personal situations going on that frankly were a distraction. And I had to make a choice to either continue feeding that distraction and perhaps detracting from finishing this and going to Austin and presenting at the biggest opportunity of my life to that point, or I could have dialed in on those things. I could have taken that energy from the other situation and channeled it into something productive. And when you channel your energy into something productive, it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for other things. It doesn't leave a whole lot of time for drama, for negativity, for gossip, for any situation that's going to take us away out of alignment from who we are and what we're here to do, right? When you're on a mission and you're focused on that mission, the mission is what matters, because that is the vehicle by which we can have our greatest impact. And so that was something that, as I was writing this book, you know, this is kind of a living diary in certain spots, especially the parts in the middle about interpersonal dynamics, because I was literally going through it at the time. I was literally going through a lot of the things, you know, whether they were lessons for the first time or repeat lessons. It was happening as I was writing this book, and I was super inspired to finish the world, because it's important to learn how to show ourselves the respect and our platforms, our dreams, our ambitions the respect, to focus on them and give them the love, the care, and the attention that they need. And sometimes that means setting a boundary with another person. That means removing yourself either partially or entirely from a situation that isn't serving a purpose, right? And so I share that with you because I'm sure there are people out there right now who either are watching this or are going to watch this who are dealing with similar situations. You know, there are maybe a relationship is draining your focus. Maybe there is a professional situation that doesn't seem aligned with where you really want to go. And at those times, again, we have a choice: continue feeding the thing that's not feeding us, or respectfully find a way to create some distance, whether that's arm's length or perhaps a lot further, right? And so just want everybody to have an opportunity to reflect on what they're going through right now, where they might need to set some boundaries. And I'll tell you what too, like, as you become more successful, you're going to need to set more and more boundaries, because more people are going to want a piece of the action, right? And, you know, that example I made about the athlete, you know, who becomes super successful, rags to riches, and all of a sudden people are grabbing at his resources or her resources. It can leave you feeling drained, and it can leave you materially or otherwise with nothing, right? And that's not a situation you ever want to find yourself in. Again, it's a good thing to be altruistic. It's a good thing to give within your means. But when you're overextending yourself and emptying your own cup to fill others, that's a reason for pause. That's a reason to take a step back, because it's not sustainable. And if you want to keep showing up keep adding value, keep having an impact, you need to make sure that there is something there for you. That is something that, again, beginning of this year and even, going into last year, I would say the second half of last year, I was emptying my cup, I was emptying the tanks, and by November, I found that there was really not much left for me. And I knew that I had to correct that again with all those things on the horizon with this book now, with pre-orders, at that point, like people had paid money for this. It needed to exist. I needed to make sure that I was leaving enough in the tank for myself so I could go and show up the way that I needed to. It's super important, and I know there are a lot of us in the creative space, in the music industry, we're recovering people pleasers, right? Or maybe we're still people pleasers. Maybe we're not even recovering yet. And we want to do right by people and we want to serve. And again, very noble things. But the best way to serve is to make sure that you're operating from a place of abundance. And you do that by making sure that your cup is filled first. So that's what I've got for you. Again, if you want more lessons like the ones we covered today, 60 plus lessons from the creative journey is out now on Amazon, Ingram Spark, and the trunk of my car. So you can get it. You see the little description in the bio and my face on the back of it. It's a cool little cover on the front, and you flip on through. Nice big print. It's a nice quick read. It's my debut book. I'm super proud of it, and thanks to everybody who supported it so far. And if you want to learn more about what we're doing here at UMC, UMCworldwide.com is our central hub for all things independent music, creativity, community, and more. And of course, you can join our Underdogs community as well, community.umcnashville.com. I need to change that subdomain, but until then, just use the one that exists and join up now. It's $25 a month. That price will be going up, so make sure you join now and you get in on an entire network full of resources and opportunities and education that we're providing to our underdogs. And if you want to tap in, go deeper, one-on-one, umcworldwide.com/academy. Let's book a session. Let's get on the calendar. Let's figure out what your needs are from a branding standpoint, but also in navigating this creative journey. I did write the book on it after all. All right, enough shameless plugs about the book. I thank you for joining. Thank you for being here as always. All of your support. Support Underdogs Across Borders. Again, that link is in the chat to our July 9th benefit live stream and in-person concert. It's a hybrid. So if you're in Nashville, come join us in person. If you're not, or for whatever reason you can't join us in person, then by all means, stream it right here on our channel. Thanks for being here, y'all. I'll be back next week. More office hours with G. Until then, grab some muffins on your way out and grab the book.